One.
You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and people who play it. Today is March 29th, 2022, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by Jason Lucas. Jason, don't mind the slightly more nasally Spencer today. I am nursing whatever this illness is that I have. Fortunately, my voice recovered last night, but how are you doing today, sir?
I'm apparently doing better than you, at least for right now. It's that late season. It's like frigid where I live. Like we get this cold snap.
Yeah, same.
My kids are sick. It's just like one last little gasp of winter, I guess, before we get into actual springtime. So that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
But I'm doing well. We are recording in the midst of a kind of surprise extended maintenance. We have not played this week since reset yet, as of the 29th. We were expecting an hour-long maintenance in our region, and then last night it got bumped up to 8 hours. So, there may be some things subject to change once servers are actually up that we don't know about right now.
True. Yeah, that's basically, we run on the best sort of information we can receive, and often there's stuff that changes last minute. We're hoping that the maintenance that's happening right now is just, technical based. It's not no content based maintenance that's happening. It's just all tech stuff. But there was a lot of stuff that happened this past week in World of Warcraft for me, but I want to do an ABK check-in before we do that, Jason.
Yeah, we do have some more news. It's not necessarily good news. It's not good news for the employees. It is bad news for the company, which I guess is sort of good news. Like it's not good news, but Activision Blizzard's getting sued again. This time by a current anonymous employee alleging sexual harassment and discrimination. So, all credit and support to that employee brave enough to come forward and, bring this suit forth. We know that these issues are, endemic throughout Blizzard, throughout the Activision Blizzard umbrella, throughout, the video game industry as a whole, and honestly throughout most industries that exist in our modern workplace. That was breaking news last week. One thing I would point out there is, and this is a little concerning, or maybe this sort of illustrates like how widespread the problem is across the industry. This employee works in Blizzard's IT department, and the individuals that they're specifically alleging harassment, discrimination, etc. against are current and former employees, higher ups, directors, managers of the IT department who came over from Microsoft a few years ago. Obviously, Microsoft is acquiring Activision Blizzard at some point in the next 15 months, pending everything goes through. So that is a bit concerning. Microsoft certainly has its own issues, within its own house. And the Microsoft employees that departed Microsoft Xbox and came over to Blizzard had kind of a bad reputation, just anecdotally from things that I had seen, employees and people close to employees saying. And also Mike Ybarra, who is the head of the studio, the head of Blizzard at this point. I forget what his title actually is. It's like studio lead or something. They keep demoting whoever runs Blizzard to, lower and lower titles. But Mike came from Microsoft, from Xbox, and Mike is kind of publicly known to be friends with, several of the accused in this case. And that raises some questions. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that Mike Ybarra is guilty of anything, and he's not being, nothing is being alleged against him at this point, but it's certainly not very flattering company to keep. And it just, if it's not like the Microsoft acquisition is going to make all this stuff go away, because there are bad actors all over this industry. It's a small industry and people move around and they do the same thing in new places over and over again. And, I think employees and customers too need to be kind of vigilant, keep the pressure on these companies to do the right things, to make the right choices, to face consequences for not having done so. So we'll see. I mean, this lawsuit story is developing, and it's kind of hard to feel like great about current Blizzard leadership and the future with the Microsoft merger in the face of this kind of information that is now, it was something that was kind of spoken about before, but I think, having a lawsuit brought against the company puts it in a different light as well. It's like, yeah, there's enough smoke here that something is on fire. So I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep talking about it whenever there's anything to report. But that was the big news this past week.
Yeah, I mean, I would only caution one thing, which is that in the case of Mike, he may not know that these people have been doing these things, and based off of stuff that's happened inside our community, even inside the Warcraft community, we've had numerous people who've come out who have done pretty obscene things that everyone was very surprised about and had no idea about. There was an issue with Terpster a while back, and then there was another one with what was his name? There was another.
Bay.
Well, Bay was another one. That was actually not even the one I was thinking of. But yes, there have been several of them where we've been quite surprised when we heard about it. So I just wanted to emphasize that, like, there's a good possibility that he has no idea, because we don't see that side of people when we look at them or when we interact with them that often. So yeah, I hope that this person is successful in what they're trying to accomplish, and that the company reacts well to it, and that, once Mike finds out who these people are, that he reacts well with these sorts of things as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of leadership, right? That's part of being vigilant and doing right by your people. And, this goes back to the Morheim days, right? Like, Mike Morheim allowed this culture to fester and or flourish, however you want to think about it, I guess. Like, it was okay. And, Mike acted like everything was fine, and he kind of pleaded ignorance when stuff was brought to light. And, that's how these things kind of become endemic inside a company, inside a culture, inside an industry, is because leadership is not vigilant, that they're not listening to their people, and they're not doing the right thing. They're not acting justly. It's easier to try to put a nice spin on things, put a happy face on things, try to sort of play both sides against each other or something, so that you can just make the company look okay. And like, obviously this is stuff that Morheim and the original Blizzard founders and leadership should have shut down 20 years ago. And this is why it's become such a crisis in the last little while here.
Yeah, I'm just thankful that it's finally being addressed and brought to light, for sure. Okay.
Right. Yeah, it was in the dark for so long.
Yeah.
At least now it's out in the open, and that's really the only way that stuff can change, I think, even if it takes longer than we'd like it to.
Yeah. Okay, this past week in World of Warcraft, man, I'm still keeping my journals as far as what I've been up to. And I guess I'll just start off with my mission table follower experience plan thing that I've been doing is working, of staying Night Fae and just grabbing up all of the tokens that you can spend to level up followers, and then every now and then doing a swap over to Venthyr or over to another Covenant and just dumping all of them into a particular follower to almost max them out entirely, or max out them plus another one. That seems to be working pretty well, versus like just being inside that one Covenant for the night and sending out a bunch of missions and then coming back. Doesn't seem to be as effective as what I'm doing. So I kind of enjoy what I'm doing more. It's very passive, and I still get a lot of missions done and still gain a lot of resources and crafting mats, which sell for a lot, which then earns me gold, which is important, and kind of brings me to point number 2 on my journal, which was that every PvP person I know is broke. I don't know a PvP person who is not buying tokens to have enough gold to be able to get their legendaries crafted and that kind of stuff. It's really surprising. My RBG group, everyone in that one is all very much suffering as far as gold goes, because they don't do any content outside of PvP, which means they don't get any crafting mats or do anything in the game that earns gold in any way other than PvPing. And so I noticed that, and then also there was a streamer who I've started doing some arena with every now and then. And that streamer also was in the same situation of like logging into 7 or 8 characters and mailing all the gold from all those characters to one character to maybe have enough to get a legendary crafted kind of. It's a very different perspective, I guess, than I've had, because I've been in the Mythic raiding scene now for 4 years, and in that scene there is stuff like heroic sales on server that happen regularly, and that earns you, usually close to like 100k a sale. And so you typically have like this weekly income that you can kind of rely on. Obviously during Prague, where we're at now, we don't do that, but that's why you sort of like through the rest of the expansion bank up a bunch of gold to make sure you are not in a situation where you're not able to afford consumables or legendaries or things like that. So I've recognized that I've lost touch with the broke person inside World of Warcraft and how hard it is to start making gold. So I started to endeavor to do that again as far as making gold goes and see how complicated it is. So far, actually, the best thing I've found to make gold off of is the really good feasts, the gluttonous hedonism feasts. Those sell for between 600 and 800 gold on my server. They don't require a ton of mats to make, and you get those mats from so many things. Mission tables, from the seeds inside of your little like orchard area that we have. You get them from just killing mobs out in the world, from fishing. Those mats really come together very quickly, and so you're able to make those feasts pretty easily and throw them up there on the auction house. So that to me was my gold making thing of the week that I sort of tried to do and see how well that would work. So I enjoyed that. That was kind of cool to sort of dip into and see how hard it would be to start making gold again, since I'm just used to passively doing it through raid at this point. I've been doing it for long enough that way. As far as this past week goes for legendaries though, like this was the double Lego week, which meant I spent a ton of time trying to sim out where my best legendaries would go, whether it was on Helm or Ring or where I should craft Unity and what that would look like. And Helm ends up being like the best statted spot to put it because it has the best budget for secondary stats and primary stats on it. It comes with a socket. There's the other thing that's big about it. So Helm was sort of like the key spot, but of course,
they did make it so there's free sockets on legendary pieces that come with sockets. That was in 9.15, I want to say. So yeah, that's an awesome bonus when you actually make that, and boom, free socket. Yeah, so if you're somebody who crafted your legendary back in 9.1 and you're just looking at upgrading it, I would recommend just crafting a new one. It's just worth crafting a new one instead of upgrading the old one. That's a pretty great way to get a socket really easily. So. Yeah, so that Helm was sort of like the key spot. Of course, tier gear factors into that, which means belt was kind of the other one. So I actually crafted a Unity Helm and a Unity belt, depending on what set I'm sort of playing, whether I'm playing Resto or I'm playing Boomkin, where pieces move around, where budgeting moves around. That was kind of it. And then I, of course, had to craft my Resto legendary. So that meant 3 legendaries crafted. And then I wanted to move where my Boomkin was, so that meant another one. So I crafted 4 legendaries last week, which made me very happy. I could take old legendaries and throw them into the dude and have them all get crushed down into dust again. Not that I'm short on dust. It just feels really rewarding to be able to do that. Now do it with base items. Let me get some mats back.
Mats back would be great.
Just a little bit. Something. Let me get rid of my inventory.
Yeah. So that was great as far as getting legendary stuff going. The disenchanting was certainly something that was helpful. And then they did this other thing that was great where they added in a vendor. Now, for those of you who are like, hey, I have a new character. I don't have any legendary memories. I want to get more legendary memories. Rendell is now your friend. Rendell, the little dredger guy, he has showed up inside Zereth Mortis. If you go to Zereth Mortis, it's behind, Rendell is standing behind the reputation vendor for Enlightened. And if you talk to Rendell, he actually sells legendary memories for Cosmic Flux. That's what he's doing with it. And I'm like, I have all this Cosmic Flux I have no reason to have at the moment because we don't have the Creation Catalyst out yet. And I want something to spend it on. So that was a great solution. And on top of that, there's another hotfix we'll talk about later in the show, but they gave a way for us to turn Cosmic Flux into Soul Cinders, which was also great. So for those people who are looking to actually craft legendaries and get them going, the big ones off of Rendell are the ones from the Castle Nathria raid. You can actually just go and buy them off of Rendell versus running Castle Nathria to try and get them to drop.
Sitting in Nathria LFR queues.
Oh my goodness. I watched someone...
nobody wants to do that.
I watched someone sit in an LFR queue for like 10 or 15 minutes. So I was like, you need to just go to talk to Rendell. You're going to be in this queue forever. Like there was... You mouse over the little thing to see who's in the group. They were queued up for Denathrius. which is great because you literally just fight Denathrius, so it's actually a great LFR queue. But it was like them and one other person for like 15 minutes, and I was like, yeah, you're not going to find the full group and get in there anytime soon. So yeah, definitely worthwhile going and talking to Rendell and getting those legendary recipes if you haven't yet, spending some of that cosmic flux if you have some kicking around to get your character off the ground, right? 'Cause that's the biggest thing about getting your legendaries is just getting your character feeling like they should feel. Which is why I'm kind of excited about this week, because this week is where a lot of people are going to start putting together either 2-piece or 4-piece for their characters. They've had 2 legendaries for a week, or at least access to be able to get 2 legendaries for a week. So I think this week is going to start feeling a lot better for a lot of people, where they actually have the systems unlocked, if you will, and they can start actually like feeling good about playing their character. So this is going to be a pretty exciting week for that. I did manage to get all my conduits to 265 plus. I say plus because I've gotten a couple to drop that are not main spec at all from Raid. Got like Feral and Guardian ones to drop at 278 from Raid. But got those upgrade in there. But yeah, I did manage to... I ran some specific Mythic Plus last week after I'd done my 8 just to try and make sure I filled out the last couple slots of conduits. So I have them all at 265, which feels really good. The only thing I don't have, and I don't know if this works this way because I haven't actually swapped to those covenants in a while, is going to like Necrolord and looking at if the covenant-specific ability conduit was tied to my other covenant ability-specific conduit. I don't think it is, which means I think I would need to swap to Necrolord and then run Plaguefall or whatever it is that gives me the Necrolord one to get a 265 version of it. I think that's something I would need to do, but I didn't do that last week. That might be something for me to explore this week. We'll see how things are going. Yeah, and then raid-wise, raid was good. We had a good week. We killed Mythic Zymox, which was actually a hilarious kill because we had a kill where basically we got to 15% and then started losing people. And you just watch the boss health progress down as our raid size progressed down to the point where at the very end, actually, we had all these dots running on Zymox, and our last remaining Warlock died and was in a pod, and Zymox was kind of running towards the pod, and the dots killed him while the Warlock was podded, which meant we technically killed the boss because the Warlock rezzed after the pod.
Nice.
So yeah, that was a hilarious kill that came together that way. But yeah, super close, super close kill on that. And then last night, we actually got Mythic Pantheon down. We spent a good chunk of Thursday working on Pantheon, and about the last 45 minutes, they decided they wanted to 5 heal, which means I went resto, and that started to make some really big progress once we started 5 healing that fight. And so we went in last night when I was like super ultra sick, like could barely speak, totally phased, like mentally phased out, but was there because they needed the 5th healer. And we actually one-shot it in probably one of our sloppiest pulls that I've ever seen. So that felt really good because I then was like, okay, I'm going to go to bed. You guys go progress Livium. And so I left them to do that for the rest of the night, which was cool. So yeah, that was my past week. And wow, it was another exciting week to sort of dive into and have some fun.
Nice. Yeah. Last week, really, it was a big week. We kind of thought that it would be. It certainly played out that way. It was marked how much better it felt to have double legendaries running around for dungeon teams especially, and for raid teams. I mean, we were shaving full minutes off of kills that were only a couple weeks old, like it was a huge spike. And it kind of, when we were looking at the timeline for how this content was going to come out, I think we mentioned it on the show, like, man, 8 weeks seems really long for Creation Catalyst, and like 4 weeks seems long for double legendaries, and I feel like we were right. I feel like it would have felt good to have like Flying Week 2, Unity Week 3, Creation Catalyst Week 4, and just get into it. We're still weeks out from Creation Catalyst, and it's just kind of weird. But I mean, this week, Unity made a huge difference, and normal really started to feel like normal. The only problem is like there are so many bosses, and this raid is so big, and we're sort of essentially progressing to parallel difficulties at the same time. So it's kind of hard to know like where to devote raid time. We ended up killing normal Anduin with a really big group, like 25 plus. I forget exactly how many people were in there, 28 maybe, which that was a good sign. there's a lot of potential to kill each other on that fight. If even like one person isn't really paying attention to what they're doing, they could kill somebody who might be a key member of the team and really put you behind. So the funny thing was this fight was bugged after maintenance on Tuesday. And so I guess on Mythic, there's a mechanic when you clear the bombs in phase 3 that it does additional damage to other players.
Yeah.
And that was firing on normal mode on Tuesday night when we did it.
Oh, fun.
So we got to that phase and like a third plus of the raid just instantly died. And we were like, what just happened? Like was that from the bomb damage? Because you do take damage when people go to the beacon in the center, but not like that. And then we looked it up and it's like, this mechanic isn't supposed to be on normal. So it's funny in hindsight. It was pretty obnoxious at the time, but we did get some new bosses last week. We had time to look at normal Lords of Dread, which is an interesting fight.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that fight.
It's a cool design. The gimmicky fights always kind of get on my nerves because they're so hectic with a bigger group. And you're really relying on people who are not necessarily all paying attention to be plugged in and cooperating. But it's an interesting design, and they made some changes to it, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, which I think will make it even better going forward. There
is, and I want to highlight this, there is a weak aura for that fight.
Mm-hmm, there's a couple.
There's a few. The first one that we were using basically was a weak aura that allowed players to vote on someone in your group, so that there was a bunch of, basically everyone had their health bars, because you see everyone's health bars because they're aggroed. And so this weak aura turns off all the health bars, lets you click on someone who has the sort of shadowy wings on them and vote on them. And then suddenly that person's health bar will appear, and it'll appear with a number of votes next to it. And you just sort of keep voting, and whoever ends up with like 5 or 6 votes, it's pretty clear that person is one of those shadowy people. And you kill that person. That was the initial one that we were using. There's now a new one out that just on your actual raid frames, the moment this thing goes live, this phase goes live, I don't really know how it works. It just auto shows the 2 people on your raid frames, like immediately.
Yeah.
Highlights them. And so you just DPS those people now, which kind of completely negates the mechanic. I don't know whether they're going to try and break that weak aura now, but
probably it does. Yeah. The mechanic is very strange though. So I think I'm going to recommend that everybody use the raid frame highlighter weak aura going forward until it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Because especially I think we had like 28 people in that fight, and it's like there's so many bodies around that it's just difficult to even identify what you're supposed to do, and then it's super time limited. So if they're going to make it like weak aura resistant, maybe they give you a little bit more leeway with the time. But we also had time to look at Heroic Tossegni. I think I mentioned last week that we had some good prog on it, but didn't quite have time to finish it off. We ended up one-shotting it when we came back on Sunday, so it just fell over, which was good to see. And we had some really good pulls in Heroic Pantheon, so I think that'll die this week with some more upgrades and people just having a little bit more wherewithal about what to do. That fight is a lot more hectic than it is on normal because you have to kill everything at about the same time, so you have to put up with the mechanics for a lot longer in the combined phase, and you need to just people need to be more have to have their head more on a swivel, I guess. You got to move out of the tornadoes more consistently. The stack up strategy that we've been doing after the Hand of Destruction doesn't really work too well in that phase 4, because you usually have like 2 lines of animal stampedes or more and tornadoes going out. So trying to post up on somebody is usually not safe. So we had to flex a little bit. We had a couple really good attempts and one that maybe would have been a kill, but we just kind of lost too many key people right at the end there. We're basically trying to brute force through the death touch. And like the 3 of the people that got targeted with death touch were like our 3 highest DPS. Oh no! So it was like there are no good solutions here, and then they ended up dying, and then it was like a 1% wipe. But we'll be over the hump with that soon. And one of the cool things I think so far about this raid for us is there's a pretty gentle ramp from normal and heroic. Like normal really teaches you like everything you need to know about the fights to tackle heroic. So far, the fights that we've seen, it's not like heroic throws in massive wrinkles that you're like relearning or anything. And I feel like that's something they haven't always done in the past. Sometimes the normal mode fights don't really teach you what you need to be afraid of, and I think they've done a really good job with that in Sepulchre so far from what I've seen. So looking forward to this week. Hopefully we can clean up normal a bit faster and shoot for maybe 1 or 2 new heroic bosses. They just nerfed a couple heroic bosses, which we'll talk about some more as well. So that's cool. It seems early for that, but I'll certainly take it. On the other side of the fence, dungeons were amazing this week because Unity just changed the entire game. And on a fort week especially, like, it did not feel like a fort week. The bosses were just melting, and the trash was melting even faster because everybody's just dumping huge AoE. A lot of the Covenant abilities are just like big AoE damage or just really bursty damage. So we got a 16 Plaguefall in time with like 7 minutes to spare or something. I got a couple other 15s under my belt, and I did Solea's Gambit for the first time this season.
Great.
Didn't quite get it in time because people were having issues with the last boss mechanic, but that was a super straightforward dungeon on Fortified. So that was a nice run. So my rating's getting a little bit up there. I think I'm like a little shy of 1800, but I can get the rank 11 upgrades. So the next to highest rank of upgrades. So that's been nice. Rounded out my stats a little bit more. I'm doing like 4 dungeons a week, so I'm not going full steam ahead trying to get 2,500 and trying to push all that. I just want to get max reward, get a couple dungeon choices. That's about all I have time for. But this week actually felt really good. I would have done more dungeons this week in a vacuum, but I just had other stuff to do, so I didn't have time. I think this week will be okay, but if this is what fort weeks are going to be like going forward this season, and as we power up more, like I'm ready for that. And then there's some other stuff to talk about in terms of hotfix changes, which we'll get into later. But as a result of a lot of the changes that they made this week, I got motivated to actually play some alts, and also for the way Unity works, I was motivated. So I actually went and did the Zereth Mortis campaign questing on the Monk and Druid and got both of their Unity belts. And this was also a case where this was post the reputation change, right? So if you do the skip, you get basically all the way, almost all the way to friendly with the Enlightened. So that was a big motivator to get out there. And then the way the Unity quest line works and everything, and the huge power spike you get from the item, I was just like, okay, it's time to get out there and do it. And then some more changes came in. I was like, okay, I'm just not going to ignore this anymore. I even did the time walking weekly on the Monk. Like, nice. I played the Monk a fair bit. I've been back to leveling up the Paladin. So I got the Paladin to like 58 plus, 58 and a half. I'm almost done getting the Paladin up there. And I'm kind of running out of steam on the Paladin because I kind of chewed through all the bonus objective areas. I don't have any like quick and simple XP anymore. Time walking didn't prove to be very good XP. At least not up at 58. It was only about 20-30% of a level. So that's not a great time investment. I might try some Torghast this week since you can level in there now and see how that feels. And then other than that, I guess I'll just be doing the one-time questing and stuff that you do on the whatever the mode is where you can just go wherever you want. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's being able to fly around and mine and get a ton of stuff from mining and get a ton of XP that way. And it's been a nice little change of pace, and just having like attainable goals. You can do this stuff mostly via questing to get some cool power-ups. Imagine that, you're not like, the grind is so much less. It's more directed towards invest your time in these particular directions and you'll get these particular rewards for your alts in this patch, in this season. So that's been a big motivator, and I've been enjoying it. I feel like it's been lacking for me for this entire expansion up until basically this past week, 2 weeks. I think the reputation change for skipping was sort of the catalyst for me, and then the changes that came in this past week are like, okay, I can't deny that I want to play alts now. Like, it's time to get some stuff done.
Nice, that's awesome. We had our patron call-in show this past Friday, and I was talking about how alts are getting very, very tempting, or at least playing them a bit more with some of these changes. So yeah. The two things,
feeling good out there.
Yeah, the two other things I want to mention. You were talking about Pantheon. It reminded me the Pantheon Mythic mechanic. In case you were curious, you remember on Denathrius how you'd have the red dudes who'd spawn with a line towards someone, and people have to soak the line as the thing charged in.
Right, you do like the group split, and odds even soak.
Yeah, that exists in Pantheon, except you have to have them charge through either the ads that spawn that make the circle grow from the middle of the room, or the seeds. Because it breaks a shield that are on those that make them either take 50% reduced damage or take 50% reduced healing. So you actually have to have those things spawn in, people go to the other side of them, and you can still have people stack in the line to reduce the damage that the person takes. So it's like a whole other movement added mechanic to the whole thing that's in there. So,
nice. Well, at least you have a clear target. Like that was kind of the problem, I think, on the Denathrius fight was to the uninitiated, they didn't know where they were supposed to go with the thing.
Exactly.
And they pointed the wrong way. At least this way, it's like, okay, make the line go through this part of the room.
Exactly.
Like that. At least you have a target.
Yeah. And then, you mentioned IO stuff, and I actually hadn't made a note of this, but I hit 2,500 last week, which meant I got my mount, that cool red riding around cool mount. Which felt really good. I got that through finally timing a streets. I finally found a group that could do it. That was the IO I needed. I had managed to time a Gambit earlier in the week, but Gambit and streets were my two untimed keys, so I managed to get both those timed in, and that meant that I then got enough IO to put me up over that 2,500, which felt really good. So yeah, it's a cool mount. It's definitely worth getting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting it later.
I'll get there.
Yeah.
I just haven't been pushing rating. I think the Valor system is like really, it's so good this season. We talked about it on the patron show on Friday, like especially with the amount of dungeons in the pool. It's like a gentle ramp to getting your item level up higher and higher. So and because of various circumstances, like I haven't been able to push as many dungeons even if I wanted to, because some of my teammates were out and like I just have other stuff going on. So I think the Valor system works really well. It keeps you going. It gives you little like road markers along the way. Like, okay, you're up to this far. Okay, you can get some more power on these couple pieces, whatever. So it feels great to use it in that context. Even if the reacquisition is annoying, like I don't really feel like I need to do more than I've done at this point. I'm just, I just take it as it comes.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, I was able with Valor System to finish upgrading both my trinkets, and so I'm now working on my offhand, which feels good to have that progressive, gradual increase. I didn't use the Valor System much last season because I just didn't get a lot of Valor gear that, like, I just wasn't good on drops, and I geared up enough through the raid fast enough that it wasn't like there was a huge demand for using Valor in a big way, so it's nice to be in a position where I'm actually using the system a lot. I basically hit the point where I've gotten all of the gear pieces that I want out of Mythic Plus that I can get, and so now I'm just upgrading the pieces that I have, and so it's nice to be in that position.
Yeah, that's awesome, because then you're not really relying on vault luck. Like, if you get something and you get that little bump, then that rules. But, getting stuff at 272 is still really damn good. So, like, if you have the piece and you can get it up that high, then... Yeah, and that's a cool thing about early in the season. It's like, just do whatever you have that drops the thing you want, whatever difficulty it is, just grab it, and then you can work with it as you go.
Yeah, exactly. All right, with that, let's jump into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the Arena Skirmish bonus event, meaning that the Sign of the Skirmisher buff is up, increasing honor gains from Arena Skirmishes by 50%, and there's a quest to win 10 Arena Skirmishes, which rewards some Anima Conquest and honor. So if you're looking to do some Arena Skirmishing, feel free to hop on in there. The world boss this week is Mortanus, the big bone construct in Maldraxxus. Jason, which memories is Morganus dropping, if this is one of the ones you want to just knock out?
So Mortanus is your melee fighter legendary world boss. So you got Guile Charm for rogues, Fujita for warriors, and Kiefer for monks. So if you are the proud new owner of a max level, a rogue, warrior, or monk, and you want one of those legendaries, or you just want to know all your memories, even for legendaries you're not going to use, don't forget to do Mortanus, because it's way easier even than buying it off of Rendell.
Yeah. The biggest thing to keep in mind is if you're someone who plays in war mode or plays not in war mode and you're having trouble finding a group, be sure you switch to the other one. I always find non-war mode, I find groups faster for world bosses like this, but like this is a guaranteed memory. So if this is a character you haven't played very much yet, I know there was someone I knew who had a priest who was looking at doing more PvP stuff on that priest. And last week happened to be the Priest Legendary one, which meant that it's up every 4 weeks. So if you don't get Mortanus this week, you're not going to see him again for a while. So be sure you're taking advantage of getting that memory. That person was very lucky and managed to get their memory last week by just happening to decide to play the Priest on the right week, where the boss was up in Bastion there. All right. We also have world bosses up in Dasmateron, the big Morgeth. You can knock him out for some 233 gear if that's something you're looking for, as well as the adaptive armor fragment and condensed atmosphere conduits. If those are ones you don't have yet, you can pick those up off of there. And then Antros, the big world boss up in Zereth Mortis, is dropping your 259 eye level cloth legs and head, leather, feet and chest, mail, waist and wrist, and plate, helm, and chest, if that's something you're looking to do. And remember, Antros is also worth 20% of your weekly quest, so be sure you're actually going there, knocking out Antros so that you can, once you've picked up the quest, so you can get that free 20% progression towards completing that weekly. We also have the Patterns Within Patterns weekly quest, which is the one I just mentioned, so that is the first one you want to pick up. And then that one also can be knocked out quite quickly through killing rares, looting chests, doing your dailies, whatever it is you want to do. You can either do it over the span of the whole week, or you can do it just, inside one condensed little play period. I tend to do it within the first 2 days, tends to be sort of my goal, just because I like to get that done and over with and sort of off my mind and off my list of things to do.
I always try to do it on the main, like right away, just so it's done, and then cycle. Now I'm cycling alts through to do it. So just, whatever world quests are up, and then if I stumble into something cool, and if not, I'll come back tomorrow for some more world quests. So I don't know. At this point, there's no, if you're caught up, there's no big driver to like smash Patterns Within Patterns out, because you don't get any big benefits at like Exalted Rep or anything. There's cool stuff to have at Exalted, don't get me wrong. I want to get there.
That endless augment
my
rune,
reusable rune, yeah. But, it's a drop in the bucket for that Exalted Rep, and it's not, you get some okay stuff out of the cache, but if you're super caught up, you probably don't have to, like, worry about it. Just make sure you're not doing stuff in Zereth Mortis without it, because you want to make sure that bar's filling up.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have a new deal quest that you can pick up and basically just go into war mode inside Zereth Mortis and either kill mobs or loot chests or do dailies or whatever it is you want to do. And that gets you one of the new PvP trinkets that are out there. So be sure you're picking up this quest so you can go in there and get yourself a free trinket. I mean, they're all conquest-based trinkets, so it's not like they're low item level. Definitely worth getting. And some of them are pretty cool. Even if you're just grabbing one that throws down the bomb that explodes, like that's even just helpful in PvE content as far as clearing large packs, that kind of stuff. That's something you're looking to do. So pick up a new deal quest. All right, Mythic Plus wise, we have Tyrannical, Spiteful, Necrotic, meaning boss enemies have increased health and inflict increased damage. When slain, non-boss enemies rise from the dead and pursue players as little like spirits that chase you. And then all enemy attacks apply a stacking blight, which is a damage over time effect and a reduced healing effect. So yeah, I mean, this is actually probably one of the better weeks for Tyrannical. Yes, Spiteful kind of sucks because you have to kind of avoid it, but you can CC these ads, you can kill these ads. You'll be locked in combat regardless until you actually kill them all off. But in places like Ardenweald inside of the other side, where you're sort of killing these really big packs, it's actually pretty neat to pull a big pack, kill all of them, mass entangle them all, or vortex them all, or whatever it is, slow them all down, and just leave them and move on to the next pack, because you're not really mounting up in between those pulls. You're just going into the next pack and just fighting into the next thing. So the Spiteful ads' health do sort of progressively go down over time, so you can just leave them alone and leave them to their own devices, and they will just melt on their own. So that's great. If they do hit you, they hit very hard, and every time they hit you, they hit harder. So Spiteful ads will tear through you very quickly. If you forget it's a Spiteful week, you can die very, very quickly if you're not paying attention. So just keep that in mind. And then Necrotic-wise, Necrotic's going to be a little bit trickier with Tyrannical because bosses live longer, which means tanks need to find ways to drop their stacks. However, because of how Trash works, it's, and you're already planning on CCing stuff with Spiteful, it's a great Necrotic week because everyone's already in the mindset of I need to be able to CC stuff and knock stuff back and make room for tank so the tank can drop their stacks. They did nerf Necrotic recently, which means that it's not nearly as deadly as a debuff as it used to be. I know Jason can speak a little bit more to that as the tank player in the group, but Tyrannical-wise, I mean, your boss is going to hit hard, and it just is what it is.
Yeah, and that does mean that, just inherently you might have a keystone rank that you cannot complete because you cannot kill a boss because your group just can't work out how to survive for that long or just doesn't meet the check. But, that's usually pretty far up the ladder. That's not going to kick in until you're at least 15 plus for a lot of groups. So, yeah, overall, I think this week looks worse on paper than maybe it actually is. Yeah, Necrotic, I believe, is down to a 5-second duration as of 9.2. If you remember, when Necrotic was introduced, it was a 12-second duration. it would stack really high.
Yeah.
And
it would refresh when you got hit.
Yeah, you would have to wait, like, you'd have to get really creative to drop stacks in some of those old dungeons with a 12-second necrotic. I think a 5-second is, I don't want to say it's negligible. Like, you do have to pay attention to it, but most tanks have some way to displace or whatever, and, you know, you can probably drop some kind of stun or snare or something and then displace out for a couple seconds, and then you're clear and you can keep fighting trash.
Yeah, I remember the Waycrest Manor courtyard with Necrotic of people like trying to kite into like a large loopy sort of oval to try and get mobs away from them in this tight little corridor space. Yeah, and you know, hopefully not picking up anything on the sides or whatever. Like, yeah, it's not quite as bad in this expansion, and with this new nerf, I think it's really in line. But, you know, yeah, on bosses, like, you're not going to have that luxury, but also most bosses have some kind of animation that's long enough where you can get it to drop without really having to do anything too ridiculous. But, you know, if for some reason you get stuck somehow, that might be a problem. But on bosses, it's usually not too bad these days, because most bosses have some kind of like channeled beam or some long animation or something where at 5 seconds, like, you're pretty likely to get it to drop. And, you know, Spiteful is obnoxious. It doesn't really do anything with Necrotic, because if a Spiteful ad's attacking you, you're not going to have time to die from Necrotic. So that's a silver lining there, right? Like, I think the Spiteful adds do stack Necro on you, but if you get hit more than like twice, you're just dead anyway. The thing that really gets on my nerves about Spiteful is, like, if you're in Mists of Tyrannosaith or you're in Spires of Ascension, right? Like, you can't go through the maze, or you can't take those angel taxis until all of the ghosts are gone. So now you're going to move through trash fast this week. Based on what I saw last week with Unity, with, you know, double legendaries really pumping away, on Fort Week, trash was just exploding. So, I think you probably have time to deal with a couple ghosts before you go through a door or whatever. But if you're doing something like Necrotic Wake, right, where you have that really big open area around first boss, and you can just sort of CC stuff, root it, just knock it away, whatever, and then move like counterclockwise around pulling trash packs, and you can kind of just ignore the ghosts even. So a couple different ways to deal with it, and that's what we always say, right? We like counterplay against these affixes, and Spiteful certainly presents that. You know, you have different ways to solve that riddle that the game is posing to you. So overall, you know, I think this should be maybe a better Tyrannical week than what we've seen so far this season. The first week of the season with Tyrannical Explosive was just nightmarish. I don't think anything this season is going to feel as bad as that first week did. So, I'm looking forward to checking out some Tyrannical this week, getting some more rating up, and I'm noticing that the Relics behaving a bit better. You know, as we've seen more fixes come in, stuff actually appearing where it's supposed to, the correct ad spawning out of the destroyed relic, buffs being applied, stuff not getting stuck in a hallway and never aggroing. Like, there are still some spots where it gets a little funny, and some of the proximity logic on the relics isn't really what you'd expect it to be. Some stuff just sits there when you don't think that it would. But the first week or two, it was like, dude, what is up with this affix, man? Like, it's just not even functioning. Like, these relics are not, they don't play by the rules of the video game. Like, I don't know what to do, but I'm finding that a lot less as we see more fixes come in, and the more dungeons I do, it's like, okay, they're working out the kinks with it. Yeah, and I also want to highlight Encrypted as the sort of seasonal fix that we're running into. It's still, just so everyone knows, it's still dies first all the time, unless you're using WoE to skip a particular portion of the dungeon. I know last week I talked a bit about using WoE to skip large areas of DOS, because I was running a lot of DOSes that week. There's still other skips. Halls is another great one where killing a WoE lets you do the skip that normally you use an Invispot for or Stealth for between the first boss and second boss. And Vi, in my opinion, at this point just needs a buff. Like, no one's using Vi unless there's like a situation where you're pulling a pack directly before doing a boss. That's really the only niche area where Vi happens. I think they need to make Vi more viable, if you will. So that people are going to actually jump in and kill that mob more often, or at least there's more situations where you want to do it outside of that really niche killing one right before doing a boss. So like third boss of Halls, there's literally a set of relics before you go up to the boss platform. So you just kill that set of relics, kill a Vi,
right,
then go into the boss platform, kill an and then you're good to go. That sort of thing is probably the one situation.
It's so niche.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great if you can pull a Vi into a boss and then get that boss's but other than that, like,
yeah,
Vi is just never attractive.
Yeah.
We did do some cool skips in Necro this week with Woe. That Necromancer pack right before second boss, that really nasty pack. You could just kind of round everything up. There's a usable relic by the little pack right before that, and man, that Necromancer pack is so nasty, especially on Fort Week. So being able to kind of, right before that, you do like an Invispot skip or whatever, typically up to the bridge. So being able to get 2 big skips in, back to back, and still have plenty of trash to meet the requirement, that was awesome, man. Being able, like, I hate that Necro pack. You get the big bone construct thing padding around it, and you get the pack right behind it that you ideally don't want to kill if you don't have to. You get stuff like free casting, volleys, and all that. So, the more that we play around with it this season, we're finding more, situations where Woe is a good call because it'll just shave minutes off your timer, literally.
Yeah. Okay, now, as far as the brawl goes this week, it's Deep 6. So if that's something you're interested in popping into, that's Temple of Kathmagu, Silver Shard Mines, and Warsong Gulch, in sort of a I guess, modified version of the dungeon. So, basically there's only 2 orbs inside Temple of Kathmagu. It's basically 6v6 is what this is inside all these. So then flags are closer inside Gulch and Silver Shard Mines. There's, less cards to keep track of. It's an interesting brawl. I don't know. It's faster, I guess, just because there's fewer people in the game and you're going to feel like it goes faster. I like the idea of small, more tight-knit groups, sort of being able to organize and sort out better. It'd be neat if there was a RBG version of some of these, the sort of Deep 6 brawl where there's 6v6. Because I definitely know that often when I'm putting together an RBG group, we end up with like 4 or 5 really good core people, and then like just random people we're bringing in that we don't really know what their experience level or performance is going to be. And that can really affect the group. So having a smaller cap might be kind of nice. It'd be neat if they brought that back in some way to a rated position. But otherwise, if this is something you're interested in hopping into, it's some easy Marks of Honor, Conquest, and Honor, if that's something you want to do. So, pop in there.
Yeah, this mode should just be Silver Shard Mines, I think.
Yeah.
Like, Warsong is just weird. Kathmagu's okay with teams of 6, I think. But we also have like a brawl that modifies Kathmagu. We also have a brawl that modifies Warsong Gulch. So, that might be an idea. Just cut this down to just Silver Shard, because I actually think like the smaller format Silver Shard is kind of the preferable way to do it, or at least in terms of like game length and overall just stuff happening, right? Like just the moment to moment. So I don't know. That would be kind of a way to maybe make Deep 6 at least you know what you're getting into, because having 3 maps in the pool for a brawl is a little weird. Yeah.
All right, well, Darkmoon Faire is coming up. It's going to be happening on this coming Sunday, so the 3rd of April. Man, oh man, it's like we just came out of a Darkmoon Faire.
Yeah, like how is it time for Darkmoon Faire already?
It's like 2 weeks, 2 lockouts in between them. I'm glad of this. I was just talking about on the last time we had Darkmoon Faire that I want it to be up more often, because I would certainly use it more often and go there more often. So here's my one opportunity, I guess. But when Darkmoon Faire comes back up, get that reputation bonus, get that experience bonus. The reputation bonus does work for Enlightened. Speaking of Enlightened reputation bonus, I keep forgetting to put this in my little journal notes at the top. There is an Enlightened contracts. If you are someone who is trying to farm Enlightened rep, get an Enlightened contract. Go and do other world quests. You will get 10 reputation per world quest. You can get several hundred more reputation a day if you just do more world quests with a contract on. So help out your scribes.
Yeah, whatever scribes are left on your server will thank you.
Yeah, and spend some gold on the week-long contracts you can get for getting Edition Enlightened rep. But yes, do that in combination with Darkmoon Faire. They also have, obviously, the dance competition, which is what I wanted to do more of last time we were there, to sort of get the achievements and toys for that, as well as the arcade and the race that's there, and all the pet battle stuff, and the tokens for mounts, and the PvP arena thing that I often forget even exists anymore, but it's still there, and you can get fun rewards from if you win it a bunch of times, and the bands that are playing, and the transmog from the bands that are playing. There's all sorts of stuff at the Darkmoon Faire, so be sure you're taking advantage of that while it's there.
I gotta go do the dance game now that they made it a toy. I'm not a huge toy collector, but I do think toys are neat, and if there's a way to easily get them, then I will take said method. So
Yeah.
I got to remember to check that out when it rolls around this week. I always forget, and it's like too late. But now I'm way out in front of this one. I was putting the notes together. I'm looking at the calendar, going, it's Darkmoon Faire time already.
I know,
Where did the
it's
last
bizarre.
month go?
Yeah.
But here we are. It's
Here we
starting up
are.
this weekend.
Yeah. I want to go into some accessibility updates that happened to the game. Basically, we already talked about a lot of these accessibility updates. However, Blizzard has put out a blog, and this blog post highlights basically not just UI elements and little short videos of how to activate them and what the effect looks like, but more of a breakdown of why you would care about these. So this covers the unit frame mouse overcast, which I've talked about a bunch on this show, which is actually quite cool. Basically, it when you're in combat, it just means that when you mouse over another character's frame and press a ability, it will cast that ability on that other frame. This doesn't just work with the unit frames there. You can also work as like actual mousing over characters and their health bars and doing things that way. There's the click cast binding, which basically allows you to bind spells and macros to mouse clicks. This is cool. However, I wish that there was a unit frame only option for this. I would 100% use this feature if it meant that I wasn't losing the ability to just sort of interact normally with my mouse when I'm not mousing over a unit frame. So what I mean by unit frames is like your boss frame, not your boss frames and your raid frames. When you actually pop those raid frames out and you're looking at your whole raid team, and you mouse over one of them and you click cast, which means for me, let's say it's innervate. So I mouse over a healer, I right click on that healer, it casts innervate on that healer, as opposed to me having to press any other button. The other big useful for me is dispelling. When I'm healing, just mousing over a player, right clicking on that player, dispelling that player. What I don't like is that I then make it so anytime I right click anything, I dispel that thing. If I right click a mob, if I right click a mob or I click another player or anything like that inside of the game, I dispel that thing. I lose the ability to right click on my character frame and go leave party or join whatever or change difficulty, or I lose all of those things. So I would love for there to be a caveat to this of making it only work on unit frames as opposed to it on your raid frames and whatnot, as opposed to it just working blanketly across everything. Because I dislike losing that ability. So what I currently use is Voodoo. It's a boss frame add-on, and it has the ability to do exactly what I'm describing, where when I right click on my actual raid frames, it does something, but then I still have my normal right click everywhere else in the game. So I know it's possible. I just want them to have an option where you can click a checkbox on and off that makes it only work on raid frames. And then I'm 100% behind the click casting binding because I think it's a great option for the game. It's also really helpful for like intervening, charging targets. Like there's so many uses for click cast binding that just solve problems for players. So mouse overcast and click cast binding, great additions to the game. A little bit of refinement needed. Cursor scaling. Basically, if you keep losing your cursor on your screen, you can make it like the size of your actual hand if you want to. There is a size increase now that lets you actually do a scroll that just makes your cursor larger. They have controller support where they've made additions to the API to allow for basically controllers, touchpads, and gyros can be used by players and creators. So if you're someone who wants to use a controller, I know there's actually people out there who've been using controllers for years through other sort of software. So I don't know how good the controller support is for WoW, but it's neat that it's an option for players, and hopefully the players who use it often can leave some feedback, and maybe there can be more additional updates if needed. And then text-to-speech is another one in there. Text-to-speech is an option that actually brings up all of the different areas from yelling to whispers to emotes to sort of any sort of interaction in the game that you can toggle on and off text-to-speech for. I know there was someone online earlier today who had tweeted out saying that they had turned it on for yells, and whenever the opposing faction was yelling, the text-to-speech would just sort of repeat the gook that we hear, which I think is hilarious to have that happening. So if that's something that you guys are interested in using text-to-speech wise, it's a neat feature. It's great accessibility for the game. And then this is something for Jason, I guess. They've added additional chat commands. They now have /readycheck as a command. They have /CD10, which initiates a countdown if that's something you're wanting to do. And you can actually also do /RC for ready check as well. So yeah, it's extra little bonuses for your raid leaders and your team leaders out there as far as chat commands go.
Yeah, this is great stuff, and a lot of this stuff, it was in the patch notes, so we talked about it when it hit PTR initially, but I think one cool thing to highlight here is they put a blog out about this last week, and they gave you a bunch of use cases. And when have they ever done anything like that for World of Warcraft? If you kind of just dig your way through your options menu, right, like where this stuff lives, it doesn't really explain what some of this stuff means, and it certainly doesn't like teach you how to use it. This blog post isn't really a tutorial, but at least it explains what this stuff means, shows you screenshots of like what it looks like when you set it up. I think that's really a big step for this game. Honestly, it's funny because the game's just so old, and you'd think something like that would be, I don't know, obvious or something that would have been covered at some point. But I was just blown away that they actually highlighted this to such a degree where it's like, okay, these are actually different ways you can approach playing the game. This isn't just like the default UI that you get when you log into the game. And the other thing too is that I didn't realize the cursor scaling was in the game. And I guess previously it was a console command, but I wasn't aware of that either. So I saw this and I went, I got to go check that out because I lose my cursor all the time. I am not getting any younger, and I have a big old monitor, and it's very high resolution, and my default cursor is like a little speck on it. And it's not anymore. It's big now. It's a big hand. I can find it a lot easier. And also in 9.2.5, which we'll talk about in a minute here, they're also improving the cursor for larger sizes. It's going to be better resolution when it's a bigger size. So it's a little blocky and blurry looking right now if you scale it up bigger, but it'll look a little bit sharper in the next patch even. So this is all great stuff. Controller support is huge for a lot of people as well, I know. And, anything that just makes it so that more people can kind of meet the game on their own terms and enjoy the game the way they want to, that's really big for me. And I would recommend, checking some of this stuff out, even if you're like, oh, well, I don't have any like factor that I needed to like overcome or something that limits me when it comes to using a traditional mouse and keyboard. So like, I don't need these features. Like, it's probably not true. This stuff can benefit any kind of player. There's something in here that is going to probably make your experience with the game smoother. So I'm glad that there's a real initiative to continue developing the game in this direction, and that their communication about it is improving all the time. So yeah, very, very cool stuff.
Yeah, next they need to make it so that you can change the color of your cursor. I want like an orange glove or a yellow glove would be really nice.
Put some kind of effects on it or something, like some kind of trail, so it really like highlights, when it's moving or something. Like that would be, because I lose my cursor a lot. I'm not gonna lie, it happens. Scaling it up helps. So anything else we could do is good. Yeah,
back in BFA, I started trying to find weak auras that worked really well for doing cursor stuff, and there are ones that like make it glow or add a trail, like you sort of talked about. But they never really worked as well for me. So I actually found there's a third-party piece of software called YOLO Mouse. It's all one word. It's the same way as you think it, YOLO Mouse. And it's a piece of software that, depending on what program you're in, you can make your mouse cursor different. And so in World of Warcraft, for me, my mouse cursor is a orange sort of like diamond that's sort of like elongated to be more like an arrow. And so it's very visible for me on my screen, and I like it a lot. It even has like a white border around it, so it's really clear all the time. So yeah, there's definitely improvements they can make to mouse cursor visibility. For me, the third-party software thing worked really well. I've been using it for quite a while now. And there's a bunch of different, there's a bunch of commands like control 1, 2, 3 kind of idea that make it change into different things or do different things depending on what you want. Some people use it as circles as opposed to an arrow. But yeah, that to me was really helpful. So if you're finding that the cursor scaling isn't enough for you, you can swap over to try something like YOLO Mouse, and maybe that'll work better for you too. It does take some like initial setup as far as like getting the mouse cursor looking the way you want for the program that you're using it for, but it's something that if they built into the game, I'd be really thrilled about. And then actually one other thing they added in this was the ability to link your PvP or Mythic Plus ratings in chat. So if someone wants you to link your score to be able to do a dungeon or something, which I think is a little obnoxious, but if that's something they want you to do, inside PvP, it makes a little bit more sense. You shift click as you would with items on your rating, and it will actually put it in chat so you can actually share it. So yeah.
A cool thing about that too is if you click somebody's link, it'll show you kind of like what dungeons they have score on.
Right.
So if somebody can't quite figure out like what they're missing or whatever, or you're trying to compare like, oh, what key would be best for this person or something among the group, just say, hey, link me your thing, and then you can check it out.
Yes,
I occasionally play with a couple people who can't really wrap their head around like how the scoring works and stuff. It's just it's a lot of information to process at a glance, right? So if we're trying to figure out what key to do, sometimes if somebody needs rating, I'll just be like, link me your rating, and I can compare that to what keys are in the group, and we can figure it out. So
yeah,
it's a pretty awesome feature. It's kind of niche, but like, why not? You should be able to link like anything you can click on from the the game UI. You should be able to link to into chat so other players can see it too.
Yeah. Okay. This is time for us to talk a bit about this Season 4 Shadowlands thing.
Yeah. Right after we went off the air last week, we're like, okay, that was a huge show. Had a lot of good stuff to talk about. Busy week in WoW. Unity's coming out. New LFR wing. Whew. Well, I guess we can kick back until next week, and then we got this huge out of nowhere news bomb about the back end of Shadowlands here.
Yeah, it's basically now that I'm just going to read the post. Now that Season 3 is well underway and players are pursuing all of the seasonal aspects of Mythic Plus and competitive PvP, we'd like you to join us in considering what might come afterwards. Later this year, after the current season has run its typical duration, which I'm curious about what they mean by typical duration, but typical duration, we're planning to conclude Season 3 and begin Shadowlands Season 4. So right off the bat, Season 4 means new round of, Mythic Plus with potentially new affix. It means PvP seasonal reset. Typically, it means some new content of some kind is what we normally see. So that's like initially like, oh, okay, I guess we're going to have more content to do. We're going to be in Shadowlands a little bit longer than I might have expected. All right, next. In Shadowlands Season 4, your PvP efforts will reward you with new higher tier of PvP gear, along with other seasonal rewards, such as mounts and titles. We're planning for the highest ranking title to be Eternal Gladiator, which I think is awesome as a title. That's a great title. A fitting capstone for your Shadowlands PvP accomplishments. We're excited to announce that we're going to shake things up a bit in Mythic Plus and in raiding in Season 4. We'd like to change up the Mythic Plus dungeon pool so that it includes 8 dungeons that span the last 4 expansions. And so it's going to be Tazavesh Streets of Wonder, Soleil's Gambit, Junkyard from Mechagon Workshop, Karazhan Lower, Karazhan Upper, and 2 dungeons from Warlords of Draenor. What they don't say in here, they say they want it to change it up so it included those 8 dungeons. I'm curious if it's only those 8 dungeons or if it's all of the other ones from Shadowlands still, Jason. What do you think?
I hope that's the entire pool. I think because that would be what, a 16 dungeon pool?
Yeah, it'd be massive.
That would be way too much. Yeah, so I think it's probably just going to be the mega dungeons, the 2 wings of each of the 3 mega dungeons from the last 3 expansions, and the 2 winners from the Warlords of Draenor poll.
Yeah,
which is okay. Like I don't have much of a take on Streets of Wonder and Soleil's Gambit yet. I did Soleil's Gambit once, and I thought it was absolutely fine, if not easy, as a fortified dungeon. I haven't done Streets of Wonder yet. It seems to have been getting tuned all over the place, and I've heard anecdotally not great things about it, but I think it's starting to come into line a bit. Mechagon was okay. They weren't my favorites. Like Workshop was all right for me. Junkyard was annoying because Junkyard is, the exterior is so huge. There's so many different paths you can take, so it was just kind of intimidating. The Karazhans are, like I love Karazhan as a concept. I love it as a 10-man raid. Upper was great on like boss week in Legion, especially if you were a prot warrior with double spell reflect legendary pants, because you could just kill Medivh and the last boss by yourself basically with spell reflex. I don't have that anymore, so I'm not going to be doing that. And lower was just a nightmare on trash week because the pulls were so big. There's so much trash everywhere. And the Warlords of Draenor dungeons were not designed for Mythic Plus. So I'm not going to lie. I'm a little scared of this dungeon pool. It's exciting, but it's scary. That's sort of my initial reaction to it.
Yeah, the currently, because people are able to vote on which Warlords of Draenor dungeons they want, currently Grimrail Depot and Iron Docks are winning, which I don't want. I'm with you, man. We were chatting about this. My votes, just so everyone knows, were Upper Blackrock Spire, because I think it'd be awesome to fly around a dragon and kill a whole bunch of trash percentage, because I think that'd be really fun, and the bosses are reasonably cool. That last boss, I think, would be really tricky on Mythic Plus. And Blood Maul Slag Mines, which is like the coolest multi-route dungeon that they have from that expansion. So
yeah,
I'm very disappointed to say that Blood Maul Slag Mines is not going to be one of them. It's the very bottom choice. Right now,
bringing up the rear.
Right now, there's a duel happening between Iron Docks and Upper Blackrock, so there's a chance Upper Blackrock sort of cuts through. They're only 2% apart. I know this poll, I think, closes in an hour or something like that. They've only got 35,000 votes, so I do wonder a little bit if like they should extend this a little bit to give more people a chance to vote on Slag Mines.
Yeah, I feel like they didn't really highlight it very much over the past few days. But yeah, that's the other problem. Like, you have these mega dungeons, which are complex and difficult dungeons, and they don't lend themselves great to keystones, in my opinion. Mechagon and Tazavesh seem to be better than Return to Karazhan, right? Karazhan was not ever designed as a keystone dungeon in any way. And Grimrail Depot does not have the trappings of a good Mythic Plus dungeon to me. It seems like it's just going to be a dead key most of the time, except you kind of have to do it to get your rating. Iron Docks is one of my favorite dungeons thematically. I don't think it's a great choice for a keystone, but I think it's okay. Like, at least it's Iron Docks, so I won't be too mad about it, even though some parts of it might be really strange on keystone.
The only thing I'd be curious about is what people can use the death wheels for, right? The wheels that roll across, like how important that's going to be percentage wise for timing your key, and whether like someone's pulling a bunch of trash into the wheel and the wheel's going over the like whatever that is, right? Like there'll be weird stuff with that on Iron Docks.
Yeah. So, yeah. Which could be awesome, it could be terrible, or it could be a non-factor, right? Like there's kind of three different ways it could go. I voted for Blood Maul Slag Mines as well. That's kind of my emotional favorite. I think that has the most potential as a keystone dungeon. I mean, you look at the pool, and like Auchindoun is so scripted. There's not really like there's nothing branching. There's no choices to make, so you wouldn't really be able to skip anything. Everbloom could have some potential. You know, Shadowmoon Burial Grounds has a little bit more potential than Auchindoun, but not very much.
Yeah.
Skyreach would be quick, but punishing, and maybe that would be interesting, because you just have to basically do several really huge trash pulls, and it's like boss rush. Other than that, like maybe Skyreach would be okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's really like Blood Maul, Slag Mines, Everbloom, UBS, and maybe Iron Docks are cool keystone dungeons, and the other ones are not, and we're going to end up doing Grimrail Depot way more than we want to throughout season 4.
Yeah,
have fun with Sanguine Grimrail Depot.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, if you're someone who wants to vote on that stuff, obviously time's very limited, but maybe they'll extend it, maybe we'll do something different, but that's certainly something to check out. All right, so for season 4 rating, they're imagining adding progenitor-themed affix system to infuse some new mechanical twists into Castle Nathria, Sanctum of Domination, and my goodness, I'm going to say it wrong again. No. Sopho. Our intentions here would be to make all 3 raids relevant in Season 4 with increased difficulty and more powerful levels of raiding loot dropping throughout all of them. So what they mean by this is they're going to make all of the raids relevant in the sense that the gear item level from all of these raids is going to be the same item level. And they're going to make it so that there's now like Mythic Plus affixes affecting the raids. We don't know a lot about this yet, in the sense that we don't know if there's one raid available each week and it rotates which week they're available, which to me would be a nightmare, because you could be progging a boss and then not see it for 2 weeks, which would suck.
No, don't like that. Yeah. Can't be that.
It could be a system where all of them are up at the same time, which could also be really weird, because then you're sort of picking and choosing which raid you're going to that week, and maybe you're trying to weigh out what you're targeting. We don't know how domination gear or tier sets are going to work inside this, whether like you have to choose between them. Do you have to re-earn your dom shards? Is the domination gear going to have that? And personally, my personal opinion, add the tier set bonus to gear in each of these dungeons. Make sure that tier set bonus works across all of these dungeons. So your Dom gear now is your tier gear. Your Castle Nathria sort of set gear that you got is now your tier gear, and just throw the tier bonus on all of it. That would be my solution, but I'm curious as to how they're going to handle that, because doing something like wearing your tier set plus 2-piece Dom gear, or full set Dom gear plus 2-piece tier set, whatever it is, to try and balance out the best optimal thing, I think will be very frustrating for players, especially if you have to then regrind your domination shards, which you have already finished and are sitting in your bank right now. That would also suck. So yeah, I think there's a lot more information we need, and hopefully this all comes out in April when they have the big announcement. But yeah, this is going to be a very, very weird end to an expansion where there's just a lot. Basically, it's a brawl. This season 4 is the brawl season where they just do whatever they want to do. Yeah,
that's a cool way to think about it. Yeah, I mean, I find this news incredibly exciting, even if it's a little scary. It's so weird. It's so weird for them to do something like this. We've never seen anything like this before. And like, you always expect, the last tier of an expansion is going to last, pretty much twice as long as any other part of the expansion did. There's every reason to believe that we're looking at, a good, many months here until expansion 9 comes out, whether it's very late this calendar year or early next calendar year or mid next calendar year, or even later than that. And so, just sitting in 9.2, I don't think that's really the way to go. And I'm glad that that's not the plan. They are getting really wacky with this, and I actually like it. I think they haven't ever tried anything like this before. We've never seen anything remotely like even what is suggested here without details in Randy's post from last week. So I love the initiative. I love that we're trying something different. Maybe it's a disaster, but at least it'll be interesting, right? Like the first few weeks will be interesting, and maybe like over time it's just the same kind of drop off in interest and terrible wait for new stuff to do that it always is, but maybe not. Like maybe the stakes change enough and the chase is fun enough that, they can wring some more life out of it and keep players interested and give us some cool stuff to do. And I think it can work. Destiny 2 has kind of, I would say, thrived with this kind of model where like you don't always necessarily need new content. You just need new goals, and you can repurpose content to present new goals to players and stuff like that. So, these interior instance spaces or whatever you've created, you can reuse for other things. They can drop new things that players are interested in chasing, whether it's gear or currency or specific rewards. So I think that can certainly work for WoW. I don't see any reason not to. We've talked for a year and a half about how Shadowlands has plenty of problems, but the dungeon and raid content is so strong. So here's a way to continue to leverage the raid content. An interesting throwback with some of the dungeon content, which hopefully works out. I think in a world where we have the stuff that we have in Shadowlands Mythic Plus with raiding and with Valor, the way the vault rewards work and stuff, it could be a real benefit. It could really work out to freshen up that pool and rotate it out, even if some of the dungeons are, seem a little punishing to think about going back and doing. We need a lot more details about what the plan is for the raid, because just simply taking all the existing raid gear and bumping it all up to the same item level per difficulty is not really going to work, I don't think, for most teams. Even if all the raids are available all the time, Nathrita gear is going to be really not attractive compared to the other stuff. And I would think your number one goal would be to start in like Sanctum and just grind Sanctum out until everybody's got their Dom sockets, situated and leveled up, whatever form that takes, if they even bring that back, and then, complement with tier pieces or whatever, assuming that, something like the Creation Catalyst still works in Season 4 and everything like that. But, if we just take it at face value from what we've played through this expansion and combine it all, it's a mess. There's this weird sedimentation between what raids have good gear and what gear is valuable from it versus other stuff. And then how does the vault work, right? Like, are you just pulling from a huge pool of raid bosses to present choices for? Can you pick more than one piece? Can you pick pieces based specifically on stuff that you killed? Like what, how does that calculus work? The bottom line is that stuff doesn't work with the systems we've been using since November 2020. So we need to see that, what the plan is in terms of how that's going to work. I mean, I would love to see new gear, just re-itemize all of these places, bring in new set bonuses, just really refresh the season. Even if, you're looking at recolors or something, or not original artwork on the armor. Just mix up the bonuses, just add some different play styles or something. Maybe if it's going to be the existing power-ups we've seen, streamline it a bit. Maybe you could have like a consumable Dom socket or something that you can put on a set piece. Maybe you have a more streamlined path to collecting and powering up the Dom shards. Maybe you have a more currency-based thing where you're just getting, old school badges off of boss kills and then picking stuff off of a vendor, and the vault's rewarding you like a big bounty of badges depending on how much stuff you participated in and at what difficulty level. Like, I think something like that could work really well. There's a lot of opportunity here to do something different and to really mix it up. I think if the answer is, well, it's just going to be all the stuff from Nathria and Sanctum and Sepulchre, but it's all going to be, plus 26 from item level from season 3, I think that's a lost opportunity, and it kind of cuts the legs out from under what could be a really cool experiment. So hoping to see just some wild stuff coming out of the team. Like this announcement was just kind of mind-blowing, because it's like, I can't believe that WoW is doing something like this. I've never done anything like this. I've been playing this game a really long time, and this is so unprecedented. So what else do they have for us? Can we get a third legendary in the mix? Can we really just, just really swing for the fences for this last season before we get, the big refresh? I don't see any reason not to, right? Like we know the big reset's coming. It's not like this stuff is going to step on some kind of future design. So, I mean, they could get really, really out there if they want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities with Season 4, and I'm excited to hear what happens in April. That's when they're really going to go over it. Okay. Hot fixes. And something I want to mention is these are actually not hot fixes. These are now updates to the 9.2.5 PTR, which is something I didn't think I'd be talking about for like at least a month. I thought I had like another month.
Yeah, that was the other thing that happened right after we stopped recording last Tuesday was, hey, PTR's updating. Oh, they're data mining 9.2.5. It must be on the CDN. Oh no, 9.2.5 is on PTR right now.
Yeah. Basically, they pushed the cross-faction instance thing live as fast as possible. So if you're someone who wants to dive in and try cross-faction stuff, anything that's not randomly match-made can be cross-faction, basically. So your Mythic, dungeons, your raids, your rated BGs, and rated arenas, all that's cross-faction. You can either do that through your, battle tag or real ID friend, or join like a specific community that's involved around it to try and hop in to do some cross-faction activity on the PTR. Similarly, like I talked about all the randomly match-made stuff. So your random skirmishes, your random, heroic dungeon queue, your random battleground queue, all that stuff doesn't cross-faction, as well as like Trial of the Crusader, Trial of the Champion, Vault of Archivon, Icecrown Citadel, Barrett Hold, Siege of Borealis, Battle of Dazar'alor, and Darkmaul Citadel are all not cross-faction as well, because they're very faction-specific events. They haven't really worked out how that's going to work yet. So yeah, 9.2.5 is on the PTR. You can play around cross-faction stuff if you want. There's also a redesigned pane for reporting players that they put in with more categories, and that you can sort of report players through. So hopefully that's something that is an improvement on the system. I might download it just to check that aspect out, because I like it when they improve the ability to report players better, because we need it in a big way. As well as search, sort of a filter that removes all search filters on groups and whatnot has also been added to the dropdown. So to not have to toggle off a bunch of filters, you can now do that easier. And then Jason already mentioned the higher resolution for the hand cursor when you scale it up. Those are all 9.2.5 things. So yeah, this is big for players who want to just start testing this right away. They can get in there and start testing cross-faction right away.
Yeah, and there's some other little bits and pieces have been data mined. There is going to be some, little bits of content, especially for certain player character races and stuff we've seen, get data mined. So there'll be some cool updates. And if it's on PTR, that means like it's not that far away. Like cross-faction instances are a reality. They'll be here sooner than later. And
yep.
I don't suspect that necessarily Season 4 will coincide with the 9.2.5 release, because I think you could probably release 9.2.5 in the middle of Season 3 and then roll the season over a bit later on. And if it's on PTR already and it's like a 3-ish month PTR as they tend to be, then I think, if we're looking at, let's say, even like early July for 9.2.5 and cross-faction instances, even that's still probably too early for a season roll anyway.
Yeah.
By any standard, I think that's a little too short for where the player base is at and what we've come to expect, and especially with this being the last new raid of this expansion, and the kind of the ramp up over the first couple months of all the features rolling out and all the power to collect. I think probably what we're looking at is 925 will roll out probably midsummer, and then the season 4 roll will take place later on once it's had a little bit of room to breathe.
Yeah. But as far as the live game goes, we also had some hotfixes rolling this week. We had more buffs to classes. Feral Druids got much stronger. Huge buffs across their class as a whole. We also saw some other changes to some tier sets. Guardian Druid. They basically now limit the amount of targets that Architect's Aligner can hit. To where it just does reduce damage beyond 5 targets now. And additionally, they're going to be sort of watching that performance to make sure that it doesn't need more adjustments. It was just a little bit stronger than they wanted it to be, that 4 set. So now doing reduced damage beyond 5 targets. So if you notice your Guardian Druid is suddenly dropping down the meters in your Mythic Plus dungeon from where they were previously, that's what they were sort of heading towards with that. But we also got changes to Warrior, Jason. What were some of these Warrior buffs? I mentioned them briefly during the call-in show, but what's the highlight here?
So there's actually some really like quite large Warrior buffs this week with resets. First of all, is Ignore Pain is going from a 50% damage ignore to 55%. So that's a 10% buff to Ignore Pain and the amount of damage it absorbs. That's across the board. That's for all specs, which is nice. Ignore Pain has had such a strange history. When it was introduced, it was just an incredibly busted mechanic that just turned you into a god if you were in combat for long enough. They reined it in, and it's sort of gone from, it wavers kind of between being extremely important and being like a maintenance rage dump. I think a buff is probably, considering how central it is to the spec design and the set bonus for this patch, I think it makes sense to highlight Ignore Pain and power it up. For protection-specific buffs, they are changing Demo Shout. Demo Shout has been a 20% damage reduction on enemies to you. It is going up to a 25% damage reduction. So that's a 25% buff to Demo Shout in terms of the damage reduction. This is nice. Demo Shout, I think, used to be 30% not that long ago. They nerfed it pretty substantially coming into 9.0 and Shadowlands. So this is somewhat of a reversion of that nerf. I will say Demo Shout used to feel really impactful, and it hasn't for me that much this expansion. So, I mean, it's a core part of your kit. If you're spec'd into like Booming Voice, it's a rage bomb. So, you're going to be pushing Demo Shout whether you're getting a ton of benefit out of it or not. So it's nice to see this come in. I think, maybe 30% is a little too heavy-handed for their overall design because it's available to you so much. But I'm not gonna complain about that. They are also reducing the rage cost of Ignore Pain to 35 down from 40, which is massive. The spec is all about maintaining your rage income and having enough rage at all times to maintain shield block and Ignore Pain as much as you can. Ignore Pain was the most expensive thing you could spend rage on. And so this kind of changes your whole calculus now. It used to be like 65 rage was kind of where you needed to hover at or above in order to hit both of your active mitigation abilities. So now it's going to be 60 because you shave 5 rage off of Ignore Pain. It just gives you more leeway. You can use your abilities more frequently. You can dump rage more efficiently because you're not in danger of capping it as much. You can spend it more frequently. Like sometimes if you have a Covenant ability down that generates rage, and maybe you have like Ravager down and that's generating rage, and you Demo Shout, you like overcap, and then that's all rage you never earned, right? This makes it a little bit easier to spend, which is awesome, and it just smooths out the spec a lot, which again is also something the 4-piece does. Also, Spell Reflect got a cooldown reduction. It was 25 seconds. It's going down to 20 seconds. So, 20% reduction on the cooldown there. That's nice. Spell Reflection is a great ability. It's not quite as like magical as non-Prot Warrior players seem to maybe think it could be sometimes. Stuff that you can straight up reflect and deal damage back to the caster is amazing, but it's few and far between. It's a relatively reliable, small potatoes magic damage reduction otherwise. So having more access to it is really good. There's very few things where it's like shaving 5 seconds off of it now means you're going to be able to reflect every cast of a thing. But that might come into play on certain things. I think of maybe second boss in Plaguefall. He has that slime injection thing that comes in on a pretty long timer, but sometimes Spell Reflect is just not quite ready. So stuff like that is really big. I mean, that's a ton of damage reduction if you can line that up. And then this one I think was kind of the craziest one of this whole list. Like these are pretty big buffs, but Vanguard reduces all damage taken by 15%, was 10%. So this is a 50% buff to Vanguard, and Vanguard is just baseline across the board. You just take less damage. It used to be you take 10% less damage. Now it is you take 15% less damage. So, like you put that on top of all of this other stuff that's coming in with resets this week. Prot Warrior is looking real sturdy. Now, Prot Warrior I think is not like the most desirable choice. Maybe this tier, this patch. And I also don't think it has much to do with Prot Warrior's sturdiness. A well-played Prot Warrior is a very sturdy tank. This just puts it over the top in terms of sturdiness, in my opinion. But our damage is just lacking right now compared to some of the other tank specs, and our set bonus is not. It's not an all-star. So cool changes. I'm not really like I haven't felt particularly squishy so far. Maybe the first week. But I'm not going to complain. I like buffs. I like getting buffs. So glad to see them. I think it's going to make Prot a lot of fun to play because you're going to be able to, use your abilities. Everybody likes to push their buttons.
Yeah. You got to look good when you push your buttons too, though. So transmog's important too. All right. As far as
that's the most important. Let's be honest. Yeah. I mean, anybody can push their buttons, but you got to look good doing it.
Exactly. As far as dungeons and raids go, we saw some nerfs to some boss health. So Skolex's health got reduced by around 6% on all difficulties, and just heroic and mythic. And then same thing with Desagnes. We're still figuring out how to say that one. People say another version. Jason and I don't like, but that was reduced by 6% on heroic. And we got to activate text to speech, and then that's true. Maybe we could figure it out then. Disintegration Halo's vulnerability reduced to 200% in normal and raid finder difficulties, which means if you eat the second one on normal, it's probably not going to kill you. It's going to do a lot of damage to you, but if you're healthy enough, you could probably eat a second Halo without dying. So a little bit more forgiving on normal and heroic, normal and raid finder, which is good. Anduin, they fixed the Fragment of Hope trigger on normal. That was the one you talked about earlier. That was important. Where there's a bunch of other things triggering that shouldn't be triggering. Lords of Dread, Swarm of Darkness. So this is an interesting one. And Swarm of Decay, caused by Mal'Ganis onto Darkness, will now increase all damage taken by 100% rather than only area effect abilities. So this was a very interesting mechanic. When this mechanic first came in, it basically meant that while this was happening, you wanted to only press your AoE buttons because you got a huge damage bonus against the targets when you press your AoE buttons. And to encourage this, they had both bosses sort of like do a dance swirling around each other close together, which means you should be pressing your AoE buttons anyways, but it also created some other issues. So the developer note is when we originally created Unto Darkness and Swarm abilities for Lords of Dread, the idea was intended to be in favor of the Dreadlords turning into an actual swarm being adversely affected by area of effect abilities such as Flame Strike. However, the way it played out was that this proved to be very limiting in classes could perform to the required level for harder difficulties. We're making a change to update the vulnerability from area effect to all damage taken so that it is equal for every class enjoying this phase. I agree entirely with this change. It felt really weird to just press a bunch of AoE buttons and play what felt like suboptimally inside this situation. But it was actually more optimal because of the damage taken increase. And it did encourage you to bring very specific classes that don't do like single target specific damage because you want to have the stronger AoE classes in on this fight. So I like this change to just go, hey, you know what? No matter how you push your buttons, you're just doing 100% increased damage. I think it'll make this boss much easier for a lot of teams, and I think it will help with the normal and heroic kills for teams that are struggling on this boss. So, yeah, glad to see it. Good change.
Yeah, this is the way it should be. Like, it's very cool theming. Like,
Very cool.
I like the developer's note that kind of explains why it worked that way. But yeah, like, it doesn't feel good for the team. It feels good for, whoever has the big AoE ability that just spams
Monks.
it. And yeah, right.
Yep.
Or like Fury Warrior or something, like, okay, yeah, that looks cool for them, but everybody else is just not contributing on that level. And it's like, this is the burn phase, right? Or whatever you want to call it. This is the signal of like, all right, stack up and burn and hit everything you can hit and pump as much damage as you can because we're getting free 100% damage. That's the difference between kind of the role play theming and what's right for, the mechanical reality of the game. So
Yeah.
Because our first look at this fight was last week, and I sort of glossed over the text and I was like, oh, well, it's just, that's the burn phase. You do extra damage. And it's like, oh, no, it's only area of effect abilities. Okay, well, everybody just spam your AoE then, I guess. Like, I don't know. There might be opportunities to have, some kind of raid mechanic where players have to step outside of the box and do something weird. That could be cool, but I think on this fight there's enough going on where, really highlighting the importance of AoE spells and goofing up players' rotations is probably not the end. We got enough wackiness going on Lords of Dread. We don't need to start pushing our buttons backwards.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Rygalon, they fixed an issue where Unstable Quasar could strike players outside of the Singularity. They reduced the boss health by 5% on Heroic. They reduced the damage of Stellar Decay by 20% on Heroic. And they reduced the health of the Quasars by 33% on Heroic. So, this fight just got substantially easier / a little bit more complicated. I say / a little bit more complicated because classes that do AoE kill Quasars really easily, and you need to kill them not all at the same time because people need to trickle into them. So you want to kill them basically just before they arrive in melee consistently so that you have waves of them dying so that people can consistently get into them with a debuff. We'll talk about this obviously when you hit the Raid Finder wing for it, when that wing comes out. But that part of it's going to get a little bit trickier. So people got to not cast their Starfalls, not cast their, big AoE abilities and kill off all these Quasars immediately because you're just going to create an issue for your raid team. However, the boss having 5% reduced health does make this boss substantially easier on Heroic, so that does help a lot for a lot of these teams. So keep that in mind.
Dude, we cannot prevent Boomkins from casting Starfall. This nerf will have to be reverted. It was funny, last week on Lords of Dread, every time we were about to go into the everybody's hostile phase, I was like, okay, they're about to go, no more AoE, and then every single time there'd be a Starfall raining on everyone.
Lords of Dread, yeah.
But I wanted to highlight these specifically because these are early heroic nerfs, which I actually really like to see. I am not like a masochist. I'm not into heroic raiding to make myself feel pain and deep degrees of frustration. I'm sure that this raid instance will continue to present a sufficient challenge to my team for the foreseeable future. I'm noticing like my server is pretty dead for the raiding scene. Like my team is now 3 of 11 heroic, and we are in first place on the server by 2 bosses. So I'm glad to see a lot of changes come in early. I think that is one thing I could say across the board is they've really just like had their finger on the button for this raid since he came out, and they've been willing to flex on stuff and move stuff around, change stuff, bring nerfs in and bring quality of life into these fights right away. And I know in the past we've talked a lot about how they're too slow to do that, and that stuff stagnates and bosses are too hard for no reason, or they're not, we're not getting enough new kills for too long on a particular boss, and it's, resulting in teams breaking up or quitting or whatever. I don't think heroic Skolex is anything that people are like breaking against and going, okay, we have to stop playing this game. But nevertheless, like it's awesome to see it come through, and normally it could be like, a couple months until we start seeing like substantial heroic nerfs. So I was really glad to see this start rolling in, even though a couple of these are bosses that we're already, killing with ease.
Yeah. Okay, and then some outside of raid and dungeon hotfixes that went in. The Progenium Essentia and Heavy Callous Hides drop rate has been increased. which is funny because I have yet to get a Progenium Essentia this past week. I literally got 0. I didn't even get one from my weekly quest.
Whoa.
I know.
Wow, you really crapped out.
I know.
That's unbelievable.
I got 0. Like, I didn't get any from raid bosses. I didn't get any from anything. I got 0. It was weird.
You ended up on a list.
I did, apparently.
Somehow, yeah.
You've crafted 4 legendaries. That's it. You're cut
That's
off.
enough.
Yeah.
I think there is some kind of logic where it wants to give you enough Essentia to make legendaries, but not like inundate you with it, but then not, like it seems like there's almost some kind of logic where you're supposed to have X amount of them.
Maybe. Either way, I was very disappointed because I want to craft. There's at least 2 more legendaries I want to craft this week. So I've been watching the market very closely for base items for them to drop enough that I can actually pick up and craft a couple more. Because I want to have the ability to flex into Kyrian Boomkin, and I want to have the ability to flex into Necrolord Boomkin. I'm really excited about trying out some Necrolord Boomkin and some RBGs and random BGs with sort of like a rot comp, because the damage is just insane when you're dotting that many targets and bouncing the dots around. So I want to try that out a bit. But they also significantly increased the amount of Soul Ash and Soul Cinders earned from completing Torghast. This is huge. This is like a massive increase. Basically, it went up from like 200 Cinders to like 1,000 Cinders, which is absolutely crazy. There's a new item, the Bag of Explored Souls. This is what I talked about earlier in the show, where you can essentially buy Cinders and Soul Ash for Flux. 3,000 Flux gets you 1,650 Cinders or 5,150 Soul Ash. So if you are honored with Enlightened, you can buy these bags. Getting honored is not quite as difficult anymore. And these bags are account wide. They're account bound. So you can buy them on your main and mail Soul Cinders to your alt, which is huge. So keep that in mind. If you're someone like myself who has like 60,000 Cosmic Flux, I can now mail a bunch of Cinders to my alts and they can start crafting Legos like crazy, which is great. So that is a huge benefit. Very happy to see that. The optional reagent slot for legendary crafting can now also be unlocked by completing the campaign, the Crown of Wills. So yeah, just, obviously keep that in mind as well. All right.
Yeah, that was tied to Honored Rep before.
Yeah.
So now you can just go do this. You could take a tune out there, and in one day you can just be able to make your the legendary crafting item, whatever. They don't even name it here. What's it called? It's you know what it is. It's the thing that adds plus three ranks. But these were the changes. The Bag of Explored Souls was the thing that came in, and I went, okay, it's time to just play alts, because now I can just do whatever I want to do, and I don't have any huge roadblocks to how I do it. And I can move stuff around among my characters, and I can actually get something out of this expansion on those characters. So these are great changes. The drop rates on the ores are just it's absurd. Like if you need zone ore and you just go out and get zone ore, like you just stack it up now. I'm hitting, like I mentioned, I was playing on my paladin a bit this week and leveling that up and just grabbing ore as I go. And it's like, even with not max mining skill, I'm hitting a rich node and getting like 15 ore out of it. This offsets quite a bit the pressure that I was complaining about. Was it last week or on the patron episode about the fact that the requirements for ranking up your legendaries haven't changed all expansion. Yeah. So if you want to craft a rank 4, it's just been incredibly punishing. This takes a lot of that pressure off. It's still bad, but it's a big release valve. This stuff is going to be more prevalent on your auction house, even on a dead server like mine. You'll be able to get the amounts you need. The prices should come down a bit. If you need to go farm, the farm is a lot less painful. The Torghast changes are huge as well. So, it's all starting to come together. I think really like the systems are all finally starting to line up. It took a long time. It took about a year and a half, but I think we finally got to a spot where it's not simple. It's not like a straight line, like thread to follow. You have to do a little research if you need to figure out the shortest path to where you need to go, but it's doable. Keep in mind, you can also move, cinders and ash around your account. You can move anima around your account. All that stuff helps out when you're talking about kitting out a new character and all whatever. And then, the optional reagent change, moving that to the quest campaign, this is the kind of stuff I've been asking for a lot lately. Put cool rewards, put meaningful rewards inside the questing experience. Call it renown if you want to, whatever, but that whole idea, right? Don't lock it behind rep, which I don't even have any control over. If I want to grind rep, I can't, because there's only really so much of it I can do in any given day. That kind of makes sense maybe out the gate. That's why I guess Renown is good, because it keeps everybody at the same pace as long as you're doing your quest, but then the catch up is built in. So yeah, this is awesome. Like, if you have a crafter that you need to get in there, you don't have to worry about, hitting your daily rotation and hitting your weeklies for X amount of time until you can get up to Honored. You can just get out there, do some quests, and now you can make your rank 7s. And this is the way it should always be, man. These are the lessons for 10.0 and beyond.
Yeah, there's still little improvements they can make here and there, but I'm very happy with where they've sort of gotten to with this expansion so far. We're getting it feels like this patch is closer to the final patch that we normally see. Of the game's actually really fun to play at the moment because all the things are in now. So we're getting there, which is great.
Just imagine once we have Catalyst and then whatever little quality of life bits we get in 9.25, and then I think it'll be set up for however long that season 4 tail ends up being.
Yeah. Okay, well, as much as I would love to dig into our mailbag, because we do have some really great letters that have been written in, we're probably still a couple weeks away from that. I think next week is going to be our next wing of Wraith Chat, and then the week after that is going to be the pre-announcement show, and we might have time to fit in there because they might be quiet during that week. But then we're going to have our announcement show the week after, and that show is going to be massive because it's going to be a Raid Wing Plus. And we're going to be talking about a boss that we haven't done yet in that sense, because it's going to be Jailer Week, which, Jason, maybe your team's going to explore at that point. But unless they...
Yeah, maybe by then, yeah.
Unless they come through with a reason for my team to go and do Jailer, we won't even have done normal Jailer. Right now, we haven't killed... We are still... haven't killed normal Jailer, haven't killed Heroic Jailer. We just haven't even seen the boss because there's just no reason for us to go and kill him gear-wise. So we're just waiting.
We need the token of tokens, Team 2. Yeah. If you are within the sound of my voice, put the Garrosh token on Jailer, please.
Yeah.
Everybody wants tier pieces, set pieces. You want people to want to kill the Jailer. Make it easier.
I would go so far.
Put a vendor in, something like that.
I would go so far as the token of tokens, great, but I would go so far as to add a chance drop at a socket to your items as well off that boss.
That'd be cool.
You could also just get here's an item that puts a socket in something. And that item should be sort of like how tier gear was, just like how the tier token should be, not part of the loot table for all the other pieces. You don't have a choice between getting the amazing neck and getting the socket. You have a choice between getting the neck and a socket.
It's the bonus loot concept, like the conduit or, something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Those would be the things I 100% would add in there to make that a much more attractive boss for teams to actually go and kill regularly. All right. With that, we're going to play a quick sounder for our patrons, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout-out to Arajian, Celian, Greg, Kapawi, Mibble the Mighty, and Shorel. Thank you. This sounder is for you. That's right, our Patreon is live over at patreon.com/thestartingzone, and you can hop in there and support our show if that's something you're interested in doing. Big shout out to our newest patrons this week. We got Tame CKS, Trevor J, Martin H, and Matthew C. Thank you so much. 4 new patrons is amazing. It's a big week, so thank you so much for hopping in there. Big shout out to everyone who supports our podcast, but also to those who show up for our call-in shows, our Q&A episodes, where you can submit stuff ahead of time or show up live to them. So yeah, great support this week. Thank you again to all of our patrons. Looking forward to chatting with you later in the month. Again, we're discussing whether or not we want to do a live stream, a watch party basically for the Blizzard announcement event. We'll have details coming soon about that. That might be a fun way to do our patron event for this month, is just do a watch party with everyone and then hold a little Q&A session afterwards. Definitely something to think about. 4 new patrons, welcome aboard. Amazing support for the show. And just thanks to everybody who has contributed to the Patreon over the years or is contributing now or whatever, or just, anything like that. We really appreciate it. It has helped us produce the show at a consistent level for a long time and to continue to make whatever improvements we can. So
thank you so much for all that, and for everybody who participated in the March patron episode that we did on Friday. We had some really meaty topics. Those shows always, we get into some real stuff that would never really come up on the main format show, so you never really know where those are going to go. But I appreciate everybody making those shows possible, and then either by supporting the Patreon and also by contributing topics, questions, and their own thoughts and comments to those episodes.
Yeah. All right. Another way to support the show that we always appreciate is leaving 5-star reviews. If you go over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, leave us those 5 stars. They mean a lot to us, and they also help boost us up those charts. And we read them here live on the show. This one comes in from Cookie7328, entitled, "Great show, great host, great community." It says, "I've been listening to the Starting Zone for years. The hosts always take time to explain what is going on, not just in WoW, but with ABK as well. It is a great podcast to turn on and get all the way up to date with WoW news. Keep up the great work, guys." Thank you very much, Cookie. That is awesome. Glad that 5 stars always helping us out a bunch. And I'm glad you're enjoying the show. You've been listening to it for a while. And I know we didn't have any ABK updates for a couple episodes there, but we're back with them again because we have news to talk about. So we like to bring it up regularly.
I'm not sure if that's fortunate or unfortunate. I appreciate the kind of responsibility to highlight this stuff. It's sad to continue hearing about it, but it's something that I think it's our duty. We can't talk about this game without talking about the reality surrounding it. So, but yeah, I appreciate you writing in and letting us know, what you like about the show. And so thanks for taking the time and thanks for checking us out.
Yeah. All right, that wraps up episode 512 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave a comment on the show, you head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter, or you can join our Discord over at thestartingzone.com/discord, and you can hop into all the conversations that happen over there. We also have a store over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. And you can get all the designs on our shirts and mugs and stickers and all that kind of fun stuff. And Jason, where can folks find you online?
Best place to find me as always is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald, always talking whatever I'm getting into with WoW and other stuff. So come over there and say hi.
Awesome. You can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and job's done.